Hey guys, my name is Catherine Pabon. I am your host on Z-Files podcast, where we bring your curiosity to our conversation. Today I have a special guest, Pete Begley. And then, would you like to introduce yourself just a little bit for the audience?
Sure. Thank you, Catherine, for having me. I appreciate it. You've got a wonderful studio here, and you do your job very well. I'm grateful. I was elected the Monroe County Republican Committee chairman last May, almost a year ago now.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. I had been a borough councilor in East Stroudsburg in the past, a committee man, candidate for several offices. So just been involved in local political sphere for a while now.
All right, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
So besides the politics, you have many roles as also a musician and a preacher, and then of course a political organizer. And which role has taught you the most about people, and which one challenges you the most out of those?
Excellent question. Being a performer as a musician teaches you about people a lot because you have to read the room.
Right.
And I even played in the streets in New York many years ago.
That's intimidating.
And yeah, that it was. And it's also just, you have to play for 2-year-olds and 90-year-olds. And in New York, you have to know a song for every nationality on the planet. They're going to walk past you at some point. So you learn a lot of different ethnic songs to please the crowd. The most challenging, of course, is the role as a clergyman. The church is called Liberty in Christ, libertyinChristchurch.com. And so that's the most challenging because to handle the Word of God, you've got to be accurate. You do not want to mishandle it. There's eternal consequences. So that's extremely important and gratifying. In the political sphere, it's very important to try to get folks elected that want to protect the liberties we have in this great nation. Yeah.
So, as a musician, do you what's your favorite genre? Or what's a genre you find yourself doing more often?
Yeah, I work, I play for a living, God's so good. And where I work, it's a couples resort on the weekend. So I know a lot of love songs. I probably know your parents' wedding song type thing. When I'm alone at home, just playing solo, I play an odd instrument called the Chapman stick. There's maybe 8,000 of them in the whole world. They're very uncommon. Yeah, beautiful sound. Stick.com. So by myself, I like to play jazz.
Jazz.
Yeah,
That's beautiful.
And jazz is it's a wide-ranging word. To me, jazz is Miles Davis from 1956. To my parents, it was Duke Ellington and Count Basie. To you, it might be someone more contemporary.
Yeah.
But that's gratifying by myself. However, with a band, I like to play rock and roll. But again, it's like Duke Ellington said, there's two kinds of music. Good music and the other kind.
Yeah, just noise.
Yeah.
So what's a scripture that means the most to you?
Look unto me, and be ye saved, all the ends of the earth. For I am God, and there is none else. Isaiah 45:22. Job 13:15. Though he slay me, yet will I trust him. So many great scriptures. The Word of God is living and breathing and sharper than any two-edged sword. But the Bible is, we cannot fathom the depths of it. A little child can understand the gospel message, but the most brilliant genius can never grasp it all. God is just incredible. Yeah.
Thank you. So you've been a very active member in the community, both religious and political. And as a musician, how do you draw the line between your role as a preacher and the role as a political advocate? Or do you believe there's no line?
Well, there is a line. We hear separation of church and state very often. Of course, it's not in the Constitution. It's in the old Soviet Union Constitution, the godless communists, but not in the U.S. Constitution. However, you do see separation of church and state in the Bible. 2 Chronicles 26, King Uzziah, the state, goes into the temple and seeks to light the fire and do the role of the priest. Mm-hmm. Now he's violating their jurisdiction. Right. And they confront him with arms, the king, and say, this isn't, you're violating your jurisdiction here. You need to leave. And he gets offended and upset, and God weighs in and strikes him with leprosy, from which he dies. So the separation is there. However, the foundation, especially of American law, is the Bible. The Declaration of Independence, we'll celebrate the 250th anniversary next year. Yeah. And there'll be a big anniversary, big celebrations in Monroe County we'll be a part of. But it mentions God 4 times. And in the Sundays Accepted clause in the Constitution, the attestation clause in Article 7, they all mention God. Mm-hmm. And I think this is so important because every law is based on morality. We put up red lights so people don't drive, crash into each other, and hurt each other. That would be immoral if we let that happen. I've asked quite a few students here at East Stroudsburg University, who is the moral lawgiver? Who wrote that moral law we all follow? And very few people are able to answer. If it's the government, well, the government's done very immoral things in the past. We don't want them to be the moral lawgiver. It can't be the individual because psychopaths think they're moral. Yeah. It can't be our family, same thing. So it has to be God. He's the moral lawgiver. He's the foundation.
It's an interesting take on it.
Yeah, Andrew Jackson said the Bible is the rock on which our republic rests. And that where a constitutional republic comes from the Bible. Exodus 18:21 says, choose men who hate bribery, fear God, able men, and put them over thousands federal, hundreds state, 50s county, 10s cities. That's a republic. Mm-hmm. We're not a democracy. Matter of fact, it's Holy Week. And this is a great example of the dangers of democracy. Yesterday was Palm Sunday. Jesus rides into Jerusalem. They proclaim him the Messiah, the King of the Jews. Everyone loves him. What happens 5 days later? That same crowd is saying, crucify him. Mm-hmm. Now, set that murderer Barabbas free. Crucify Jesus. That's democracy. That's mob rule. You're at the whims of your emotions. Very dangerous. The Founding Fathers warned us about democracies. And you know, the separation of powers, that's from Jeremiah 17:9. The heart is desperately wicked. Who can trust it? Even John Adams quoted that Bible verse. Mm-hmm. So there's a fine line. And when I do preach, I don't usually mention the parties. Yeah. Oh, vote this, vote that. Yeah. I mention the philosophies. The left is, if you're a hardcore atheist, secularist, you'll tend to be on the left side of the political sphere. If you're a devout Christian, Bible-believing Christian, patriot, pro-life, you tend to be on the right side of the political sphere. But the Bible is the authority, and any political belief I hold, I try to tie to the Bible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you feel, for instance, when you mention democracy, do you think there's anything positive about democracy in your opinion? Or do you think it's fully...
Well, the old Roman saying was the vox populi, the voice of the people, which should never be ignored. And that's often expressed through democracies. Yeah. However, a constitutional republic shows us that we take an oath to the Constitution, not to a man. Right. Not to a party. Mm-hmm. Whereas with the democracy, it's more the character you're behind. So, yeah, the good thing is that you should always know what the people want, what the pulse of the people is.
Yeah.
And a direct democracy, of course, would give you that. But again, our hearts, we've all been deceived by our hearts. We've all, looked across the room and said, "Oh, I like her," and then you find out, no, she'd be really bad for you. Don't go there. So that's our hearts
Right.
that we have to guard and protect.
Thank you for that. That was a really good response.
Honored.
Do you believe that, like you just mentioned, like do you believe like American Foundation is built on a Christian God, or do you believe that, because many religions have a God, do you believe in God in general, in the sense of like the foundation of morals and like what different Bibles bring, like for morality and that foundation, or do you think it's specifically just a Christian God?
Excellent question, and it is the Christian God, Jehovah. Now, this is my opinion. In 1776, we write our Declaration of Independence. Each of the 13 colonies then write a constitution.
Mm-hmm.
And that constitution, I have it in my phone. It'd be impolite to pick it up and read it. But if you read the Pennsylvania Constitution from 1776, it will require you to swear an oath that you believe the Bible is the infallible, inerrant Word of God. You believe in the Trinity. You believe in heaven and hell.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the constitutions required that. Now, a Hindu doesn't believe in those things.
Right.
A Muslim doesn't believe in it. A Buddhist doesn't believe in those things. Even a Jewish person doesn't believe in the Holy Trinity. So it is overtly Christian. The First Amendment says Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. John Marshall is looked upon as the greatest Chief Justice of the Supreme Court in American history. He defined religion as denominations of Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
If we were meeting in 1776, I would say, "What religion are you, Catherine? Now, I know you're Christian, but are you Baptist? Are you Anglican, like in England? Are you Catholic, like in France?
Yeah.
Are you Quaker, like
Yeah.
William Penn, the founder of Pennsylvania?"
Yeah.
So,
Well, I would be Catholic.
right. But today, I would say, "What denomination are you?" And you'd say, "I'm a Catholic."
Denomination.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm, whatever it might be. So that's how it was phrased back then, and words kind of change meanings over the course of hundreds of years.
Yeah.
So we look at the word religion as, well, all religions is what the First Amendment is talking about.
Yeah, like freedom of your religion. To
Right,
have different
right.
religions.
But what they meant was, yeah, you can be a Buddhist here, but we're not going to be under the laws of Buddhism. We're going to be under the laws of the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
You're welcome to worship here and all that, but you're not welcome to impose it because we're a Christian nation. And most of our presidents and the Supreme Court has ruled that, quote, "we are a Christian nation."
Yeah. I think Joe Biden was our second Catholic president, right? Because Kennedy was our first one.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And then other than that, I think just Catholic and Christian is all we had for presidents so far.
Correct. All Protestants except John F. Kennedy. My father was so happy when he was elected because my father was born in Ireland,
Mm-hmm.
And he was a great president. And Biden, correct. But again, the country was founded by Protestants, for the most part, that wanted freedom. We don't know a lot about William Penn, but he was jailed in England for being a Quaker.
Yeah.
His father had lent the King of England money, and to pay him back, the King of England gave William Penn Pennsylvania and Delaware. It was part of Pennsylvania at the time. Now, William Penn learned to speak Algonquin, incredibly difficult language. And
Yeah, I never heard of that.
Yeah, he learned it. He walked among the Indians unarmed, He's a Quaker,
Mm-hmm.
and he purchased the land from them. He bought it from them.
Yeah.
So you're not on stolen land, and it was founded by a good Christian Quaker. Sorry, my answers are long.
No, it's okay. That's actually amazing. It's like less for me.
Well, I'm glad.
Like in terms of politics, so you ran and you've been a hand in like as a candidate. What was your experiences? I know you won, at least you ran for the 115th district.
I did.
What was that experience? Do you feel like you're running that being a preacher was a disadvantage, or do you think it helps your campaigns?
At the time, I didn't have a church, so I've only been preaching for the last 2 years.
Okay. Thank you.
I started Liberty in Christ Church in Stroudsburg, but I've been a Bible-believing Christian. I mean, one day I was talking to a man, and he saw the Bible app on the home screen of my phone, and he said, "I'm going to vote for you. Go knock on my neighbors. You don't have to waste any more time with me." Yeah. However, you know, when folks find out that I am a social conservative and lean to the right, some people are upset about it. But what I do tend to say to anyone is, look, whether you vote for or against me, just vote. The primary is on May 20th this year. And usually Monroe County has about a 20% turnout for the primary. Now, if we have a 60, 70, 80% turnout in every election, the primary and the general, the elected politicians are going to be more competent, more honest. Because they're going to say, well, they're all watching us. You and I can't make a deal, together here. You know what I mean?
They actually care to go out and vote.
Because 80% of the people voted. We better walk the straight and narrow here. So I would tell people, look, whether you vote against me or not, just go out and vote no matter what.
Thing.
We have to drive up those numbers. 20% of people voting in primaries is
There's a huge
unhealthy.
Percentage of people not voting.
Right. Yeah, but I think to answer your question more succinctly is, in general, it helps, I think, because your beliefs are not based on yourself entirely. You say, look, I appeal to Christ for my beliefs. And not that I'm going to interpret every word of the Bible accurately. I don't think anyone can do that except Jesus. But that's the foundation of my beliefs. And if that's a problem for you, then I think you got more to be concerned with than some stranger knocking at your door. Even when I talk to other clergy members, a lot of them say, well, I just don't do politics. I just avoid it.
Yeah, I hear that a lot,
And I say, well, that's you have free will to do that, but can you tell me one prophet in the Bible that avoided the political sphere?
It's important. It's like our social...
Elijah went to King Ahab and said, you better straighten up and fly right, or you're going to wind up dead. And that wife of yours, Queen Jezebel, not only is she going to die, they're not even going to bury her. The dogs are going to eat her body in the street. And that's what happened.
Integrated in our livelihood. So how we carry on. So
right.
It's important. You can't really avoid it. It affects you no matter what.
It does.
And that's at least what I tell some peers my age. Go vote because it's going to affect you anyways.
Absolutely.
So do you want a hand in it, or you know?
Yeah, good work. Yeah. Good work.
But so you chaired meetings and filmed and edited political events, and you have experience with that. Has it been being active in the local movements for years, what role do you think media plays today in influencing public opinion compared to mainstream news outlets now? Because you see a lot of things like fake news, or just as a journalist at least, and working for a local news station, I've noticed a lot of people are having a disdain towards news. So how do you think that's going to affect with private news outlets like podcasts or social media?
Well, you're the wave of the future. You really are, because it's the podcasters that are the true press right now. You're speaking the voice of the people because you're on the ground. You're not a billionaire so far as I can tell,
no.
or a millionaire so far
Would love to be.
Right. So you don't have the means to force your political beliefs on the masses.
And there's not any influence either.
Right. You have to earn it with
yeah.
your trust, with your integrity, and with your work ethic.
Yeah.
That's all you have that you can offer to people. Now, I'm always going to tell the truth. I'm going to get voices from every side of the political aisle, and I'm going to work hard. You're not going to see, sloppy work here.
Yeah.
That's the future. No one gave you this as a favor. You earned it. So I think that's what we need more of, and I think it will keep happening. I don't think anyone, and I don't mean 99%, I mean 100%, I don't think anyone in your age group watches the evening news on television.
I do.
At 6:30. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, what I mean by that is, growing up, it was ABC, CBS, NBC. You had three choices, and the evening news was at 6 was the local news, and then 6:30 was for the whole nation.
Yeah,
Walter Cronkite, Peter Jennings, those folks. I think you watch news more than a half hour a day, but not the that network news. And I just don't think it's the same thing with newspapers. I don't think very many people your age are going to go out and buy the New York Post at Wawa across the street. It's just, those are fading away, good, bad, or indifferent. However, there's more information available now than there ever has been before. And sure, there's fake news. Again, thou shalt not bear false witness is the 9th commandment. So you don't want to follow people that lie on purpose. We all make mistakes, but that doesn't mean we all lie. And I think that you check those sources, but I think it's between X, former Twitter, and Facebook and Rumble. There's so much news out there that's available, and I think it's helpful.
Yeah.
And the future.
I think it definitely helps people get more informed, so that they don't have to search out and do things themselves if they don't want to watch or if they don't trust news. They have it at their fingertips. Yeah,
and the work you're doing reflects that, because there's it's an off-year election, so there's only a few county-wide seats on the ballot: treasurer, coroner, court of common pleas. There's 5 candidates running for Court of Common Pleas. You'll probably inform the people and bring those candidates to them, which is very important.
Thank you.
This is where your peers and those older and younger will say, oh, okay, so such and such is running for Court of Common Pleas. That's an important office. It's 10 years long if they win. Do they agree with me? Is that someone I would vote for? And of course, I'm the Republican Party chair, so I would ask everyone to vote for Kelly Lombardo and Alex Merrick.
So speaking of being the chairman, so a total of 4 seats, we talked about this, but it flipped in Congress last November, and then 2 in Monroe County here. You mentioned in 2023 that 11,000 more registered voters were Democrats than Republicans. And now I checked recently, 2024 updated to 7,000 more Democrats than Republicans. So that is 4,000 around about short than it was before. So do you take any credit in that? Like working with the Monroe County Republican Committee, what was the hand in making those efforts happen, or do you think it just happened organically?
Well, both. Of course, President Trump has really motivated people to get registered and to vote. He's been terrific. However, there's an organization called Early Vote Action, headed by a man named Scott Pressler, and he has registered tens of thousands of voters.
That's amazing.
In the last 2 years. And he has local people working for him. Gina Mankato in Pike County.
And is that just for the Republican Party, or is
No,
it
no,
just
they're
vote in
they're
general?
bipartisan. They're nonpartisan.
Cool.
So
That's
they're
amazing.
just basically standing, setting up a table on campus at ESU. Are you registered to vote? No.
Yeah, I've
Oh,
seen
would you
that,
like
yeah.
to register? So they won't say, oh, please register as this party or that party.
It might deter people too, like.
Right, right. But that had a big hand in it, and I think, the 4 years under President Biden weren't good. It was really bad.
Yeah.
Cost of eggs, $7-8 for a dozen eggs. Just the inflation and the soldiers killed withdrawing from Afghanistan. So many bad things happened, and the weaponization of the Justice Department. They called parents at school board meetings terrorists, and the Justice Department set up a specific branch. And we see the emails now go after Catholics, they're potential terrorists. This woke people up that, wait a second, that's not the America I know.
To wake people
yeah.
up. Yeah.
And so if you want limited government, you tend to vote Republican. And so I think that's had a hand in it. But we certainly were out there registering voters and making calls and just trying to bring those numbers more.
Everywhere.
Bring those numbers into line.
Yeah. When you're talking about the message of what wakes people up, what do you think is waking up Monroe County voters? Like when you talk to people in your committee and when you talk to constituents, what do you notice in our area is something that's become an issue or something that's waking them up for the Poconos?
Right. Well, residents of Monroe County have the longest commute in the nation.
Yeah, we're a huge commuter town.
Yeah. A lot of people go to New York to earn a living, and then you want to raise their children out here in beautiful Monroe County. But it is a long commute.
It is,
so we want a better business climate. And of course, Republicans are more friendly to business than Democrats. The regulatory state tends to vote Democrat, left wing. So that's one of the major issues driving the importance in Monroe County. Of course, we have crime here that we didn't have 20 years ago. And the affordability to rent an apartment in Stroudsburg.
Gosh, it's insane.
Yeah, it's just so costly
crazy
right now.
Yeah.
And I think part of that is, look, however you feel about the open borders under the Biden administration for 4 years, if 20 million people come into a nation, well, that's 20 million people that need a place to live.
Right.
So the cost of an apartment goes up. It's a lot, tens of millions of people that need a new vehicle, need a car to drive. So you want to just buy a used car cheap. Well, now you got all these competitors for that.
Do you think that's what's affecting Monroe County specifically?
Absolutely, because New York brought in tens of thousands of them.
Yeah.
And what do? Well, it's hard to stay in New York and afford a place to live.
Yeah,
Let me drive an hour out, a little more than an hour out.
The New Jersey property taxes, so maybe let me drive another hour.
Yeah, and there's more freedom in Pennsylvania. There's more liberty.
Yeah.
The Second Amendment is treasured here, whereas in New York and New Jersey, the Second Amendment isn't, as valued. And again, this goes back to God. Right, the first sentence of the Declaration of Independence, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which connect them with another, and to establish among the powers of the earth a separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind, compel them to disclose a reason for the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, etc. The laws of nature and of nature's God. The next time you come across an attorney, ask them, can you tell me some of these laws of nature? I don't think they'll answer. I don't think they can. It's quite sad. But it's the first sentence of our birth certificate. You think every lawyer would know it. But the laws of nature, one of them is self-defense. What do you see in nature that doesn't practice self-defense?
Yeah.
That's the Second Amendment. The porcupine is not worried about the lion.
Yeah.
Because he's got protection. He's armed. So that's what I mean. Those things kind of lead you back to the Republican Party, which is founded on the Bible.
Do you think it's like fair for, New York at least, to have, limited access to like weapons and guns because New York City and the population and, it's like one of the biggest cities.
Right. Well, wherever the government disarms the people, there's more gun crime. There's not a lot of home break-ins in Pennsylvania because you're probably going to leave in a bag with a little tag on your toe. Because everyone's got a gun in their house.
That is true, yeah.
But there's plenty of home break-ins in the Bronx because you're not going to get shot breaking into an apartment on Anderson Avenue in the South Bronx, near where I grew up. So there's a lot of people in New York, but a well-armed society is a polite society. I think Benjamin Franklin said that. Right, because some guys, I tell Europeans, look, you're a young, attractive woman. I don't know anyone in your position that hasn't been hassled by a big, overbearing jerk of a man.
Yeah.
You're just out with your girlfriends. You want to have a nice time. You're not looking for attention. This is who you are. Now, if this happens in London, and you're walking to your car at 3 a.m. alone, and he's following you, what can you do? You can make a phone call, like when you're in the mood for pizza.
I think they're allowed to have knives on them.
No, they've taken that away too.
Really? Knives?
But London's
I thought
brutal.
They used to have like a stabbing problems.
Right, that's why now we have knife control. But even that, if this guy's 350 pounds, 6'5", you with the knife, still not going to go great. But if you got the 38 in your purse, you're going to send him to meet Jesus. Now, the laws of nature.
Yeah.
You are on equal ground.
Yeah.
I tell people, why do you want to disarm women? Why do you hate women? Who's the feminist here? I want women to be armed. I want them to be able to stand and protect themselves, no problem. But I don't want that 6'5", 350-pound guy to be in a boxing ring with Catherine. No, that doesn't work either. There's women's sports and there's not women's sports. Only women should compete in women's sports. Q.
Okay, so in your campaign, you've highlighted your property tax elimination. So I dug deep for this, and your state's rights. As we were talking about with the Second Amendment, because every state's differently, these are big ticket ideas, like federally. How do you explain these goals to just local constituents who aren't thinking maybe wider, but more what's going on like in their own backyard? Who are you focused on day-to-day issues?
For property taxes, I think that when you buy a home,
East Stroudsburg has lower property taxes than Stroudsburg, right?
I think so, but I don't know for certain. But they're both overwhelmingly.
I know for businesses, I think they do.
Yeah, I know they're both overwhelmingly Democrat municipalities. But property taxes in general, I oppose because, if your grandmother paid off her house 20 years ago, but God forbid your grandfather got sick, she spent all her savings to keep him alive. God bless.
Sorry.
And now she can't afford to pay her taxes. I don't think she should lose her house.
She bought it and she finished all
That's
the mortgage
it.
and everything,
Look, even when you take out a loan from the mafia, you pay the VIG, but when the loan's done, you're done.
Yeah.
They don't say, no, you're going to owe the VIG till you die.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's unethical. So that's my take on property taxes. Now, how do you make up the difference? SB 76 years ago said we'll raise the sales tax a percentage point and we'll raise the income tax a percentage point or thereabout, and that'll make up the difference in property taxes, which would stop the school boards from constantly raising our taxes. School boards with 50% proficiency in reading, writing, and arithmetic. You know, we graduate kids that can't read their diploma.
I just had an interview with Chris Field, and we were talking about Strasburg School Board, and we were talking about that, the 50%, like reading and writing and arithmetic.
Yeah, I like Chris, wise man.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, you think, but we do need taxes. Like, what taxes do you think are ethical, at least?
Right. Well, the sales tax, obviously. The income tax, I'm a flat taxer. Why? Because God's a flat taxer. It says it in Leviticus. Both the rich and the poor shall pay 10%. And the Constitution was a flat tax document until 1913. So I'm opposed to the progressive income tax. And basically, well, they say, well, the rich should pay more. Okay, well, if you made $1 million last year and I made $100,000 and we're both paying 10%, you're going to pay the government $100,000. I'm going to pay $10,000. You've paid more. You paid a lot more than me. But it's equitable. It's just. It's fair. Both you and I are paying the same rate. That's what's proper. That's morality. So I would go with the sales tax, the income tax, and we see with President Trump bringing in tariffs. That's how we paid for everything in our country. We didn't have an income tax at all.
With tariffs, like, since you mentioned it, there's so many like opposing sides of tariffs, like how it's making things more expensive, like getting things from other countries, and how to, like, the trade and everything. Like, what is your take on that?
I think the shock to the system will cause that.
Yeah.
But it'll be very brief, and then it'll be excellent.
You think it would be smooth down the line?
Oh, yeah, and very profitable for us. Now, President Trump, love him or hate him, he's an incredible negotiator. Nobody denies that. The Art of the Deal, his book, I read many when it came out 30, 40 years ago. But if I was in Europe last January, you don't see American cars often. I was in Ireland years ago, and everyone's got a farm. And I said to one of my cousins, I said, I don't see any F-150s here.
Yeah.
I see pickup trucks, but they're not Fords. And it's because of tariffs. Those nations put a 200% tariff on our stuff, and we put a 10% tariff on theirs. Even with Canada and Mexico, this happens. So, again, just fairness. That's all the president's asking for. You want 10% tariff on us? We'll put a 10% tariff on you. That's fair, right? Now, if you say, no, that's fair, well, you got to explain how.
Yeah.
I thought 10 and 10 were the same numbers.
That's fair. And then when you mentioned the school taxes and like how the school boards are bringing them up and up, so if the school boards, where do you think is a fair tax, or you think we shouldn't have a tax for schools?
Well, again, so the property tax I would prefer to be eliminated completely.
Right.
However, until that happens, I think the school boards should do their best not to raise taxes. This is why.
Do you think it's good where it's at right now?
No, I think it's far too high right now. I mean, there are homes with $15,000 a year tax bills.
Yeah.
That's over $1,000 a month. That's just, it's not coming back.
And the average income, at least in this area, if you're not commuting, is far too low.
Yeah. It's shocking, which, slows down growth and business interest to come in. And again, if the schools were doing great, you could look the other way and say, all right, well, it's worth it. Yeah. But this is why the Department of Government Efficiency is so important. I want a Doge Monroe. I want Monroe County to have a Doge agency to eliminate fraud, waste, and abuse. There's plenty of it in the schools as well.
So if our school, like, testing scores aren't all that high in this area, at least, and like our taxes are being raised for it, where do you think like the money's going towards? Like, if it's not, the students are progressing.
Right. Well, I think if we walked into East Stroudsburg High School right now and asked the principal, I'd like a list of every employee in this school. 70 years ago, 90% of those employees would be instructors of children.
Yeah. Like teachers.
Now, I'd be surprised if it's 60%
Really?
teachers. Yeah. Nowhere near 90. There's so many administrators now.
Oh.
And principals, assistant principals, etc., so that it's no longer the money's just going to the kids, going to the children, going to good books, going to instruction.
Yeah.
Now it's a bureaucracy. And with things like tenure, we're on a university campus, there's tenure here, which basically means you can't get fired. I'm a musician. If I go to work tomorrow and I don't play Hey Jude right, I'm getting fired. That's just how it is. You have to perform to a certain expectation or you get fired. It should be that way for any job. But somehow in academia, it isn't. Of course, when you can't get fired, you don't work hard anymore.
Like the fear is out.
Yeah. There's no competition. It's
You don't think teachers should be unionized in that way to have some protections?
Well, again, I'm not a fan of unions for several reasons. First of all,
I know it's a political, like party-wise.
Yeah,
I know
well, and it's also
don't.
biblical.
Yeah.
The pyramids, they were built by Jewish slaves, the Israeli
Yeah,
slaves.
that was unethical.
Right. Now, Pharaoh told the Jewish people to make bricks. Now, every brick is the same, right? Just one kind of brick. But every time God tells you to build an altar, he never uses bricks. He always says, get stones. There's no two stones that are the same. And so the union is everyone's the same. You could be the best teacher that East Stroudsburg High School's ever seen. And I could be a bum. Now I just show up, hey, how you doing? We're going to talk about the Yankees today. Yeah, did you see that game last night? They were terrible. I'm getting sick of it. Well, I'm not teaching. I'm just pontificating.
Yeah.
But you and I get paid the same
So
because we're in the union.
Yeah. So you don't think unions create like a fair system for individuals?
Well, I think we want to differentiate. Franklin Delano Roosevelt is a hero to the left. Democrat, president, ran for 4 terms. He was opposed to municipal unions. So I'm opposed to municipal unions, first and foremost.
Because I was thinking overall, like blue-collar workers.
Right. If you're in the electricians union, that's on you. That's fine. I got no problem with that. Because you're an individual, you've made a choice. But municipal unions, it becomes unethical because the teachers union takes money from you, whether you agree with them or not, and probably gives 95% of their political donations to the Democrat Party, as do all the municipal unions. I defy anyone to find one union that gives more money to Republicans than Democrats. Now, to me, if you're the mayor of New York and I'm the head of the union for custodians in high schools. Well, I say to you, Mayor Pabon, we'd like a 5% raise next year. And you say, well, Pete, I like the work you're doing, but boy, we got a pretty tight budget. Well, I understand, Mayor Pabon, but we will be contributing to your opponent 6 figures unless you give us that raise. Well, Mr. Begley, now that you put it in that light, we'll be happy to give you that 5% raise. Now, the FBI calls that racketeering when John Gotti does it. But when the unions do it, what do you call it? I don't call it justice. I don't call it. Now, if the union said, hey, no matter what, we're going to give 50% of our dues to this political party, 50% to that political party, then I'd be, okay, I'm still not crazy about it because it's one size fits all, but at least you're fair, you're just. But no, they buy politicians with that money.
Well, what would be your take on, like, campaigns in general? Like, all the donations, like, not really having any limits, and companies, healthcare, like, all these different people.
I don't like it.
Yeah.
I don't like it. And be certain that 30 years ago, Wall Street gave more money to Republicans, the
Yeah.
banks.
Yeah.
That's no longer the case. Wall Street gave much more money to Obama, much more money to Hillary, much more money to Joe Biden, and much more money to Kamala Harris. So I don't like just throwing money. Look, Ryan McKenzie is the congressman from Pennsylvania. He has 3 districts in Monroe County, in the West End.
Yeah.
That congressional race, I think $34 million was spent. He was outspent 8-1 by Susan Wild, the Democrat. Now, so far as I know, she didn't invent the rocket ship. I don't know how she came up with $28 million.
Do you think it's because she was an incumbent?
Well, that's part of it, and also it's those. Well, who gives more money to Democrats? Well, the unions. It's an interesting thing. You sit there and think, well, Mark Zuckerberg, creator of Facebook, owns Instagram, is obviously a capitalist, right?
Yeah.
He's a multi-billionaire, he's a capitalist. Why does he support politicians that are socialist? Seems strange, right? You know what the reason is?
Didn't he support Donald Trump in the last election?
Oh, no, he doesn't like Trump at all.
I thought he went to his inaugural.
He went, because they all went, but if you look at his donations, it's to Democrats. Yeah, and he hurt Trump in 2020 on purpose, blocking him. Trump got kicked off Twitter by Jack Dorsey. You know what I mean? So big tech is left wing, and one of the reasons a leftist capitalist billionaire will support socialist politicians is because in capitalist countries, competition is encouraged. Right. In socialist companies, they shoot the competition. If you opened a business in Castro's Cuba, you would do what he said or you would die. That's all. That's a socialist economy. So that's one of the reasons.
Kind of dictating.
Right. There's people that like it for its beliefs, but there's other people that use it as a tool. And John D. Rockefeller said competition's a 4-letter word. Zuckerberg feels the same way.
Because by definitions, socialism's supposed to be something else, but sometimes there's always like a thin line between everything. Like for political parties as well. If you go too far left, you go too far right.
Right. Look. The acronym for National Socialist is Nazi. Hitler was a leftist. I've never met a right-wing socialist. Have you? You interview politicians. I've never met a right-wing socialist. So fascism was created by Giovanni Gentili, made popular by Mussolini. They were Marxists.
Yeah.
They were left-wingers. But if we walked around this campus right now and said, is fascism on the right or the left? 95% would say it's on the right. Probably more than 95%. But it's a lie. It was invented by left-wingers, as was Nazism, as was communism, as was socialism. So they try to convince you on paper it's noble and just. They just never show you an example of it. And it's been tried in many nations. Every continent has tried it. And it's always the same result: death, destruction, and theft.
What about like countries like Switzerland or Sweden and everything, where they're progressive, but they're not socialist, they're not far, but they are progressive, like left?
Right.
I would say they're pretty not like aggressive.
I would agree. Several reasons. First of all, they were all built on the Bible. So their foundation, when they came out of feudalism, it was a biblical nation. Right. You're not going to go to any country in Europe and not see beautiful, breathtaking cathedrals.
Right. I've been to Italy and
it's incredible.
very
Yeah,
nice.
yeah. Florence was in Rome. Oh boy, but so they have that biblical foundation. Now they're drifting away from it. But one of the reasons they can have quote unquote free health care is they spend no money on defense.
That's true.
Because they know America will stop the boogeyman from coming through the door. We spend the money on defense. They don't. Now, President Trump goes to Sweden and says, look, you need to kick in. Yeah, we're not paying for NATO carte blanche anymore. You need to start putting in 3-4% of GDP. Well, guess what's going to happen to all those free social programs?
Yeah.
You know, and of course, when the Queen of Sweden, if they have a queen, if she gets sick, you know where she's going, right? She's going to First Avenue in Manhattan, because that's where the best doctors and hospitals on planet Earth are. She's not going to the clinic in Sweden, where the everyday people go.
Yeah.
She's going to seek out the best. They all do. So they leave their socialist health care and they come to the capitalist one.
Yeah. Do you think there's anything that we didn't cover that you would like to discuss? Or how do you feel? Like, was the questions okay?
They were very good, very good. It's been a most enjoyable discussion. I would say that we've covered a lot of political ground, and I'm very grateful for your patience and time.
Thank you. I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, it's you have an excellent show and a great demeanor. I wish you the best.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
But no, I couldn't say there was anything else.
All right. Thank you so much. So this was my podcast, Z-Files Podcast. I had Pete Begley. Thank you so much for joining me. And that's all for today. Bye, guys.